evolutionary biologist. And I said the word evolution, and therefore he's a scientist, and you have to believe him. I rest my case.
I just have one question. What is evolution?
Exactly. I rest my case.
It's. Are you asking, like, serious or?
Yeah, seriously, what is it? And if you can define it very properly and concisely, then I would need you to give me the scientific theory of evolution after that.
I mean, I could say that evolution is the state, the change of living things over a period of time, but not necessarily like, but it's like a gradual change.
So
Oh, so
now,
aging.
now
So,
you're
Something
going to
wait,
have
hold
to
on,
give.
Flappy, hold on. Flappy, hold on a second. No, hold on, friend, hold on. According to that, I'm getting older, so therefore I'm evolving.
No. That's not what it is. What evolution is when, like, okay, let's say you have a kid, your kid has a mutation, like whether it's maybe white hair, purple eyes. I'm just making shit up. And that becomes an inherent trait. And sometime in the future, that kid has other kids, and those traits become passed on. And that is a way of mutations coming around. What evolution is the phenomenon where a living thing passes on mutations that end up changing that species to become very, like, over a long period of time and gradually affecting the
Can I step in?
species. Sure.
I do want I need to ask a clarifying question because in the whole paradigm of what you're talking about, some things are dormant and things are dominant. So what is being passed on can either be something that's dormant or dominant. These genes that you're talking about are expressed in certain ways given the reproductive status. So it's not necessarily a mutation because a mutation would mean something devolving, right? So it would mean something is wrong.
Not necessarily. A mutation is not a devolving,
But you got
because
to
that would
consider what I
imply
said
that,
before. Consider what I said
yeah,
before because genes
yes,
can be dormant.
traits are, yeah, that it's different. It's different. I understand that. But what I mean is these things are, it's something that is passed down. Evolution isn't something that is a living thing. It's in itself changing, but their offspring having different results
Okay, so
because of a
what instance?
particular.
Yeah, okay. So what instance is a mutation something that's positive?
When it affects you in your environment and you
Something observed that's
basically,
positive. Something that you can observe right now.
yes,
A mutation that we have right now that can be observed that is a mutation that's positive.
thumbs.
That no, I'm saying observed to occur, like occurring mutation.
No, well, it's not something you can observe like that because it just changes over time. I guess one thing you can kind of see is like we
No,
have
it's
tailbones, but
changing the DNA
that
sequence.
hmm?
It's
Some
observed
don't
when the
mutate.
DNA sequence changes. The mutation, that's the DNA sequence changing. It's not observed over time arbitrarily. No, it's when the DNA sequence changes. Something turns on or off,
Yeah, and
changing
that
the
becomes
sequence.
passed down.
Yeah, okay, in that way, yeah, over time, but the sequence is observed as the sequence changes. That's what a
Okay.
mutation is, right? Changing the DNA structure, changing the information.
Yes.
Information is yes or no.
Sure.
Cool. So changing something, saying yes or no, is evolution because the components that are there designed to turn on and off are turned on.
Repeat the last part.
So the components that are there, the information and the structure that is able to turn on the DNA structure. So when it turns on and off, you say that's evolution. The information that's designed to change has changed.
Yeah, well, the design,
The information.
the information is
Where did that
changing.
come from?
Of course. Where did what evolution come from? Where did that
Well,
DNA change come
it's
from?
part of the trick within this question. Hard to define evolution, and you're already down in
No,
the
no, no.
idea
Hang
that
on.
this information is mutating and changing over time because the information came into existence somehow.
Because the DNA was altered. DNA. Okay, think of your body as like a giant computer, and
Hmm.
code is being processed. Code
Yes,
is
code.
constantly being processed, so that way the next computer has the same whatever. And a mutation,
Mm.
regardless positive or negative,
Hmm.
is just a malfunction in a certain typo in this code,
Malfunction.
and it ends up becoming a it ends up and it,
No,
it
no,
becomes
malfunction's devolution.
wait, what?
Malfunction's a devolution. You said a malfunction.
No,
It's not
whatever.
evolution.
Like I'm just saying like a change in the DNA, right? A
Yes,
change in that
changing
code.
the information. Yeah.
A change in that code.
Hmm.
It just
So
happened. And it
no,
probably happened.
it's designed to do that. If
Okay.
something's wrong, then that would be a devolution. Right? The chain of information is broken, doesn't work properly. But if it turns on and off like it's programmed to do so, then what you're saying that's evolution. No, that's just doing what it's programmed to do.
I see your point. No. I see what you mean. Because, yeah, I would agree that, like, it is doing what it's supposed to do. And it's supposed to thrive and learn and adapt to its environment. And it does that. Well,
Okay.
not like evolution itself, but it ends up becoming something that is designed for the benefit of the creature.
Okay. So we're trying to determine whether evolution is the cause of changing what? Biology over time. How we crawled out the sewer, for example, breathed air with lungs, looked with eyes, and how we adapted to our ever-changing environments.
Mm-hmm.
So how are you defining evolution?
How are we defining evolution?
Hmm.
How would you define it?
I'm not making a
Dude, hold
claim to
on.
evolution.
Hold on, bro. He
Okay.
said it already. He said, listen, he said, if the code changes to be something that's advantageous, then it's designed for the benefit of the creature. Oh, wow. So you just proved there's a coder and a designer. Good job.
Could believe that. It's just a metaphor.
No, dude. No, dude. Code, information, and design, okay, are from minds. That's it. That's how it works. That's what they do. That's what it be. By definition, dude. Not even up for debate, bro.
Okay. Do you? All right. I mean,
Also, noticed you very first started with a living being, and then just described how it changed over time, with using what its mechanics that it's supposed to do, that it's designed to do. And then when they point that out to you, it's like, well, okay, now what do? You have to go back to life began in the first instance. You don't have it.
well, I mean, I'm not gonna argue whether it was created or not. I'm agnostic. I'm not gonna say one or the other. All I can say is I do believe in evolution. I
You have
believe
to
that
define
there
it.
is some way to. What do you mean?
You haven't defined it.
Yeah, and a belief is thinking something without evidence.
I'm not, guys. I'm not a big voice here, but I'd say let's maybe leave him alone. Let him digest the first thing he's having trouble with. Not to leave him alone, but not kill everything.
Hey, I understand, dude. I understand what you mean. So, for example, if we talk too much about evolution, he's going to go away thinking about evolution rather than thinking about it was just demonstrated to him that water's flat and level. I understand.
That's right. Yeah.
I don't know.
All right, bro. How about this? How about this? How about you ask the questions and we'll give you the answers rather than the other way around?
Relating to flat Earth.
Yeah. Like how flat is it? How'd you find out it was flat? What led you to the conclusion it was flat? Think questions like that, maybe. I don't know. Just a hint. You don't have to follow that script.
Can it be based on belief? Do you have a certain belief about the properties of Earth that you don't find in this study?
Me personally, no. All the properties that I think how the Earth operates are perfectly congruent with the Earth being flat. As a matter of fact, I told you earlier that even gravity, no matter which gravity you pick, regardless of the view about which gravity you're picking, is still congruent with the Earth being flat. So pretty much everything is congruent with the Earth being flat.
How big do you think the Earth is? Or do you think it's just something that goes on?
I err on this side. Look, I'm a specific theist, and what that means is that I have a claim about the specific God that exists, and that's the God of the Judeo-Christian paradigm or the Bible. And in the Bible, the God of that scripture says, if you know the earth, how big it is, and you stretched a line across the whole earth, why don't you let me know, sucker? I'm paraphrasing a little bit. So, in other words, God Himself is basically telling mankind, no, you don't know the bounds of the reality. You don't know how things work. I'm God, you're not. Sit down, shut up.
It would be stupid to make a claim to the size of the Earth, or what either the entirety of reality from our minuscule point of view.
I agree your point of view is could be minuscule.
Compared to God who created it, yeah.
Sure.
Now, I would submit to you, friend, that not everyone in here is a specific theist that's a flat earther, and nor do they share my worldview. But I think they would all agree that it's logically untenable to think that a world which we haven't fully explored, that we can make claims about the full extent of it. I think every flat earther would agree.
Is there anyone here that is a flat earther and an atheist? I mean, I don't want anyone to call that doesn't want to be called out. I'm just wondering.
Not. I mean, I might have seen one in 10 years struggling, but I think the conclusion when you turn around and ask the question, when you understand the Earth is flat and contained and blah, 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 when you ask the question, how did that get here then? You're kind of only left with that one answer that intelligence creates. It's kind of antithetical to the idea that the ball that came from a big bang, that I suppose you could argue, exploded into existence all by itself. So nature created everything first, and then the biology and the consciousness came afterwards. You could argue that from a ball perspective, but on a flat Earth perspective, it's really do so.
Yeah, we've had 5 members of our community that were atheists and flat earthers. 2 ended up getting married. 1 ended up spazzing out and doing who knows what the heck. The other still hangs out in our main server trying to philosophize. And then the other one, I can't remember exactly who they are or what they did. Now, that also depends on what you mean by atheist. Because if you mean somebody that just lacks a belief in a God generally or a God specifically, then that's much different than someone who says God doesn't exist. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. Like someone, I guess, like the first example, I guess, would someone who's more like an agnostic than anything, just to think, not a care to, as opposed to like being like very stubborn, like, oh, like God doesn't exist.
Yeah, very few of them actually can make the claim God doesn't exist. They usually always hide behind, oh, you're pressing me. Now I'm an agnostic all of a sudden. They want to act big and tough that God doesn't exist, but then as soon as you start arguing with them, all of a sudden they're agnostic.
I mean, I think I consider myself agnostic in the sense where I don't have a sight for any. I don't want to word it like that, but I haven't been convinced of a God. I am appreciative of concepts, but I don't find a it's not something I could prove. But uh,
You, you're kind of left in a dichotomy when you answer this question. You've only got 2 choices, and one's you can logically demonstrate that intelligence creates. You can't demonstrate this claim that you don't need intelligence to create things spring into existence just because.
Hey,
Some
XXEdge.
people get some people get hung up on God. We're just answering the question how shit got here. Intelligence, yeah, okay. You can deem that as God if you want to, but for the purposes of this, just the intelligence, the intent, and the information.
Hey, XEdge. If you don't mind, look in the chat. At 5 minutes past the hour, I posted a link to a video. I even called, what do you call it? Linked it to you directly. Add that to your watch later on your YouTube list. Watch later.
how long is it?
It's, I don't know. I don't remember, but it's well worth it. And it talks about everything we covered here and then some. It's well worth watching. I was a kid who grew up a Christian kid, and I don't want to bang on about this too long, but I was the one that always said, yeah, but how do you know? Yeah, but how do you know? Yeah, but how do you know? No matter what anyone said, yeah, but how do you know? This video, just shut me up. I don't say how do you know anymore.
I'll definitely. I'll give it a watch.
It's very interesting. I'm not lying to you. It's
Does it? Is it?
really good.
What is it? What is it arguing, or is it not? Is it just giving us a rundown on stuff?
It covers everything we've been covering and a lot more, but in depth.
But is it arguing what your point of view is, or
I don't know how to summarize it other than to say it's evidence of intelligent agent, a proof of creator. But if you watch the video, you'll see that it covers, like I said, everything they've been talking about and a lot more, but in depth. That's it. I didn't want to take up too much time, but I just wanted to request.
No, I'm glad you pointed out because I did look at it. I do intend to watch it at some point.
Oh, hold on, Frank. What you meant to say was my neurons fired based on these triggers and dihedral saccharide electrons spinning because my auditory nerve was excited, because my eardrum vibrated, because the sound of your voice went through a speaker, because you decided to tell me something, because a star 3 trillion years ago and 40 trillion miles away at one time in the past did something, and the dominoes led to what we did today. And it doesn't really matter because it's all predetermined, and I don't actually have the agency because I'm just an electric walking mud puddle, not an actual individual.
Yep, that's everything I thought of in my head.
Yeah, so intuitively you know that worldview is just nonsense, dude. The descriptions of yourself are self-evident to you. That's not the case, that you're just a pile of electric walking mud puddle that's delusional and thinking that he actually is a person, right? You actually are an individual.
Well, I know I'm not a mud puddle, but I'm made up of water. I'm made up of chemicals, carbon.
That's your body, dude.
Yeah, that's on my body.
You. Yeah, there you go. So so you're more than just your body. You're more than just your body, right?
Whatever's going on in my head is unique compared to what is going on to the rest of my body. I can't deny that. Because it is, I don't know whether we're going to call it consciousness, just this state of livingness that we have. But I don't know.
That's a new one, the state of livingness.
I don't know how to
I've heard that one
describe.
before.
Sounds
I'll
like
tell
you
you
can
what,
get lessons around 1 o'clock down the local community
Oh.
centre.
Dude, that's straight up.
Make sure you-
That's straight up from the
Make sure you
Bible.
bring your
right?
incense.
So
So,
God breathed into man the breath of life, and man became a state of livingness.
I'll tell you, X, if you watch that movie and that video and come back here and have something to discuss, that would be seriously interesting. Like if you disagree with something, that would be a very good discussion.
I will watch this one, and maybe I'll watch the other one when I get time, the 3-hour long one.
Cool. So you're actually going to come back with a progressed conversation, leaving off where we left off and continuing on with something new. Wow. So you're going to be like one of the, yeah, bro, you're going to be like one of the 7 people in the 8-year history of our platform and the 30,000 members and the 50,000 guests and the 100,000 listeners that actually decided to continue the conversation rather than just reset and come back and ask us, but how does gravity work?
Well, I'm not gonna just circle around the same questions unless I actually had more to add to it. Because what would be the point?
Holy crap, everybody listening right now that's a Glover, for the love of God, follow this man's example.
By the way,
Sounds
you
funny,
asked
but
how
it's-
long it was. It's a 40-minute presentation, and then there's about 15 minutes of commentary. Just to answer your question.
All right. What the Hoffman?
No, the one I linked.
The science versus scientism.
Yes. Yeah.
That's a word.
Yeah.
I'm not entirely familiar with scientism.
You're going to find out when you watch it, bro. You're going to find out, bro, that what you thought was science is actually a religion. And actual science is not what you thought was science. It's going to be great. You're going to love it.
Well, I'll see if it shakes my worldview. But I'm probably gonna go for now. I'll look into this. I'll definitely come back because this is just definitely interesting kind of dialogue here. 'Cause I feel stunted right now, but I. That's only because I don't. Yeah, you know.
I get it.
Yeah, you've been so great. We've gone through so many things here. Rodwin destroyed outer space for you. Then we went through the horizon measurements, followed by the problems in academia. It's been done over and over and over and over. So the 2 images we gave you are those, the observer heights are documented there. The first one is 1 foot. The second one's 5 foot. It doesn't matter. At 1 foot, the expected horizon distance would be 1.22 miles. At 5 foot, although I don't even know why. I think they're just being generous in the second one, saying 5 foot when it's actual 1 foot, and the maximum is 2.73, meaning we can even give you some more feet if you want, but it's still way further than it should be. And like T-Dub just explained to you, where that horizon distance is would necessitate, an outrageously huge globe, which is not what's being claimed. So we're debunking this model. It's not even close. It's way, way, way further than the horizon would be expected on this sphere. And we can show you the original video of where this still shot was from if you're interested. In this person carefully documented their observations, and other people have replicated this over and over. If you cared enough, you could go to California and do it, or you could find a long distance observation closer to you. That's the thing about testable, repeatable, verifiable measurements, is that people can redo the same thing. That's why it's actual evidence that's worthwhile and valuable, unlike NASA's fairy tale sci-fi images from space.
Yep.
I will say, I can understand it being a lot very difficult to believe in that when it's not from this perspective. It's hard to not make that connection. I mean, it's easy to say like, oh, this is not what I'm looking at.
Yep.
But
let me help you out a bit. Let me help you out a bit, brother. Before we go on, I don't want to gloss over a point that was missed. You asked a question. So
Okay.
if I could see this and the Earth is flat, why can't I just keep seeing more and more? Interestingly enough, you can. At that location, there are different sightings of the island behind the oil rigs. It's the only island in that vantage point that is within the range that you can see. What I mean by that is the ambient atmosphere actually has what's called an occlusion rate. That means you can't see through it forever. At about 250 to 300 miles, depending on the day, the atmosphere becomes opaque. That's known as the Rayleigh atmosphere extinction coefficient. Okay. So in other words, you can actually see from that location every single landmass that's available to be seen. And by the way, that's even worse because that island is even further out, right? So you shouldn't be seeing this. You shouldn't be seeing the oil rigs in the manner in which they are. You definitely shouldn't be seeing the horizon where it is. And you certainly shouldn't be seeing the island, which is Anacapa Island, if I'm not mistaken.